Thank you. Good to be back on video again. We've done a lot of podcasts. And we're wishing everybody a wonderful, happy Hanukkah. Where Baruch Hashem, after 12 classes on chapter 12, we're in chapter 13. We got Bar Mitzvah.
On the month of 12.
Yeah. So it says, Perishut Tchilat Chasidut. This chapter is about Perishut, which means abstinence. Which means, last night was actually the day the Balatanya, the founder of Chabad, got out of jail. So just to quote him, you have to understand, the highest level a Jew could reach is to make the mundane into holy. But that's basically the top of the ladder. Right now, before that, you have to have self-control, which means I know personally in my life, a lot of times when we don't have the appropriate amount of self-control, it can get very, very, very dangerous. Which means, this is the fundamental difference, by the way, between Judaism and like Buddha. We, on Shabbat and Purim, which is even higher than Yom Kippur, we have the best foods, right? We have to have a feast. But overindulgence, like I tell you, my rabbi, Harav Ben David, which was a student of the Chazon Ish, he was vegan. He would only,
really?
During the week, only Shabbat he would have meat. During the week, so it
You wouldn't have eggs or anything?
Maybe eggs, but definitely not meat. Meat and chicken. Rabbi Mahtov used to attend to him, our good friend. So what I'm trying to say is,
so he wasn't vegan.
What we're going to see in this new chapter, as an introduction to the chapter, is that maybe it's good. I felt so guilty. I'm not giving sushi at my daughter's wedding. I just met with the caterer. So.
Oh, there's no sushi?
Yeah, so.
It's not a good mazal, as you say.
Rabbi, you have to give sushi, or else.
So, but no, guys, seriously. I think it's not. It's divine providence. It's hashgacha pratit. We're learning this thing because in Judaism, there is a very strong point of becoming holy is that you shouldn't indulge in everything. Shlomo Melech says in Mishlei, Sadikim eat to be satiated, but the stomach of Reshaim pops, right? So to be holy means to be separated from anything that's holy. You know that. Unholy. Like Tamar, which made herself into a prostitute and lured her father-in-law to sleep with her, is called a Kedeshah. Kedeshah and Kadosh, right? Comes the next chapter after this is Kedusha. So let's get into it. Perishut Tchilat Chasidut.
I thought this was the last chapter.
No. The Ramchal basically, we were talking about Ruach HaKodesh, Ariel. Mm-hmm. If you follow everything in this book, the top of the ladder, remember like Jacob's ladder that he saw? If you go step to step, you get to Ruach HaKodesh. So we're just a few steps away from Ruach HaKodesh. One of the steps to get there is to be what? You have to have in your integrity, in your soul, in your conscience, this idea that it's not good for me to overindulge. Right? Mm-hmm. So he says the beginning of Perishut, of abstinence, is Chasidut. ותראה שכל מה שביררנו עד עתה מה שמצדיק את האדם. So it's very important. He says till now, give me 1 second, I'm turning on the podcast also.
Ethan says there's a shortcut to Ruach HaKodesh, that if you learn all the Rashis of the Parsha and that, you attain Ruach HaKodesh.
There's different levels. The Ramchal's level. So he says, when a person starts to abstain from overindulging, he's at the tip of the iceberg of what? Piousness, Chasidut. So guys, real Chasidut is not having long payas, right? Shekol ma shivarnu anata u'masech adam sheyeh sadik. Says, by the way, this is a very important part of the book of Mesilat Yesharim. You know why? The first half of the book, once you've actually learned till chapter 12, and action, right? Some people learn Daf Yomi, but Daf Yomi goes in one year, goes out the other, right? Torah is about fear of heaven. I'm very sorry, guys. You go to Kabbalah Center with Madonna and Shmadana and all this fluffy duffy stuff, but it goes in one year, comes out the other, and there's no fear of heaven. Is it worth? The Zohar says it the most beautifully, guys. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says any mitzvah that doesn't have love and fear is not a real mitzvah, right? So in Judaism, we always need that perfect balance of loving God, but knowing that God is not your friend and you can't be silly and, there is hell. There is a day that you're going to have to answer for everything. So this is a fascinating thing. The first half of the book, you become a what? Sadiq. From here on, guys, guess what? From Perishut on, you're going above the letter of the law, right? You're going to piousness, which is what?
Ruach HaKodesh.
Ruach HaKodesh, getting to the Ruach HaKodesh. So he says, ונמצא פרישות עם החסידות והזהירות עם הזריזות שזה בסור מרע וזה בעשה טוב. Okay, guys, my Rosh Hashiva that you're looking at, Rav Weinberg, said the Mesilat Yesharim starts with two of the most important attributes that every Jew should, like 24/7, be aware of. What is that? Do you know what they are, Ariel?
Fear of the heavens.
Yeah, which translates practically into zehirut, being careful not to sin. And zerizut means what? To run after.
Alacrity.
Oh, I love you, baby.
I love you back.
So it says what you gotta do is you gotta run towards the mitzvah. So he says the same way like this. Perishut is like zehirut. It's saying don't get drunk, right? Don't overindulge with your wife. Like you know why Ezra made you know how the Chassidim are always going to the mikveh? Because it started from Ezra. The Gemara saw that the Kolol people were sleeping with their wives too much. They weren't showing up. They were showing up late to learning because it takes a lot of energy out of you. No, I'm not joking. That's why he made Balkari. He said anybody that's a Balkari, the Chachamim say we don't want the rabbis to be with their wives like chickens that are always consummating and making eggs every day. So I'm not. This is Gemara Brachot. You should learn it.
Oh my gosh.
So he said, Perishut is to tell you stop, is to put your brakes on. And then the next chapter, which will be Chasidut, is that you want to be above the level of a tzaddik, right? For Hashem, you're even willing to go what? Oh, it makes me cry right now because this whole, they were videoing for the Ner Israel banquet. I saw my dad was like, for almost 2 years, you know that building that you guys went to Hebrew school for grade school? Yeah, my dad didn't go to work for a year and a half. 90% of his time for almost 2 years was to build that building.
Wow.
And he didn't charge any contractor fee, he built it at cost for them. So that's really Chasidut. Do you have to do that? No. So, Rav Moshe Feinstein says a beautiful idea. And this is good for you guys because you guys are my chief kiruv people, this side of the 405. Elliot. So he says, Rav Moshe says a beautiful thing. He says the same way you have to give 10% of your money. How could you stand by and let all these Russian Jews? As divine providence would have it, I became this randomly a Ukrainian Jew ended up at my Shabbat table, and he has a photographic memory, and he's like becoming from.
How did he find you?
Avner Simons, the guy that owned the RV. A friend brought him over for Shabbat. So Rav Moshe Feinstein says, the same way you have to give 10% of your money for tzedakah, you should give 10% of your time to do what? Kiruv, to learn with other people, right? But
go back to the piece about how the rabbis instituted that you shouldn't spend a lot of time with your wife.
That's exactly what Perishut is. What means is
balance, though. You have to keep your wife happy. At the
exactly.
same time.
So we passed the Mishnah Brura, Rav Avadia, and all the current poskim, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, that has. When you get married, I'll give you these classes. That's part of the chapter. But it says that we paskin like the Mishnah Brura. The Gemara really says from Friday night. The Gemara says that really Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars, do it once a week, from Friday night to Friday night. And the Zohar says the best neshamot come.
I hear the same.
But the Mishnah Berurah says nowadays that we do it twice a week. So Perishut means if a person wants to be Paroush, right? See, this is like this. If you go according to the letter of law, there's no limit. A person could be with his wife 10 times a day. Is there?
I don't know. I think it might damage your health if you're.
No. What I'm saying is, he can, as long as the room is dark, right? During the day, it's a whole special halacha, only Talmid Chacham. But let's say, whatever, right? This is exactly the idea of what Perishut is. Perishut is saying, even though it's technically according to the letter of the law, okay, right? You have to be very careful if you want to get to Ruach HaKodesh to not overindulge. So let's just go into it for another five more minutes, and then we'll do the parsha. He says, what does Perishut mean? Even if, make yourself holy and abstain, even though it's mutter. Guys, I want to see who's smart here. Who's the classical Paroush? Hint, he has a long hair. Exactly. In the Torah, one of the most classical cases of somebody trying to be a Paroush is a Nazir, right? Because the Nazir sees that a woman did adultery, she became a sota, and she blew up. So he says, wine and alcohol is so dangerous that it could lead to hanky-panky. I want to be what? A Paroush. And he says, "V'zot hora'ah shel ha'malveh atzmo perishut lomar liyot parush marchik atzmo min hadavar." Parush means you should take a step back, even though this is technically according to Torah law. It has a O-U, OK, Chaf-K, all of the kosher symbols on it. But in order that I should have self-control and I shouldn't maybe get too heavy, sometimes when you eat too much, have you ever had too much cholent? And you all want to do is sleep for 3-4 hours? So a Paroush, I think that's a very good example of a Paroush, even though it's Shabbat. He'll say, you know what? I'll have a little bit less beans, and I'll have a little bit less kishka and heavy food so I could learn more. You understand? And he says, so what is the, guys? I know you guys love the rabbinical order, so as Providence would have it, we're going to come back to the rabbinical laws. The Paroush is so I don't want to say paranoid, but is so concerned, that's the right word, that God forbid he's going to do the main sin, like sexual sin, that already he's creating a what around himself? A fence, right? So does a tzaddik doesn't necessarily do this, but the Paroush, he's very concerned that God forbid. He doesn't even have
the same as a ben yoni.
No. The Paroush, what the Paroush is like the Nazir, right? The Nazir says, if I potentially, since I saw the consequences of overindulgence in alcohol that led to adultery by the sota, right? That's why the two parshas are next to each other, right? The Chachamim say whoever sees the sota in her misery makes himself what? A Nazir. So he says the whole idea of Perishut is that you put a arm's length, right? You want to stay away from the sin like a fence, so God forbid you never come to do what? The sin itself. What does the Perishut mean? The Paroush says, since possibly out of this overindulgence, whether it's overeating, sexual, whatever, workaholic, right? It could let me, I'll give you a perfect example, guys. You want me to give you a very good example? Because me and Rabbi Eli are actually learning the halachot of these. Do you know that you guys need to be very careful? This time of the year, in the winter, a lot of people have gotten stuck on the 405. And it's after sunset and it's Shabbat. What are you supposed to do?
Park your car and get out?
No, so the Rabbi Heinemann says to park on the middle of the freeway and walk out. You're allowed to at least get off the off route. But there's a whole Shulchan Aruch, there's a whole halachic literature, right? The Paroush is the type of guy, he says, you know what? Even though technically it's brought down in the halach and the poskim that you should stop working at a minimum 2 hours before Shabbat, right? So let's say Shabbat this week is 4:30, 2:30 you should stop working. The Paroush,
that's the halacha?
yeah.
You should or you have to?
You should. This is because you at least. I want to let you know that Harav ben David, my Rebbe, already he would, even though he would only come to LA like 3 weeks in a year, 2-3 weeks in a year, he wouldn't even meet anybody. Rabbi Mahtov told me on Fridays, because he didn't want the meeting to get into Shabbat. So the Paroush is so concerned that God forbid he's gonna, desecrate Shabbat, that he's gonna not leave. Let's say his office in the valley and he needs to be on the you know why they call it the 405? Because it takes 4 or 5 hours to get wherever you're going. And sometimes, the LAX traffic will back it up or whatever. Or maybe everybody wants to go to Magic Mountain from where Benji lives in Valencia. But wherever way you want to slice it or dice it, the Paroush is so worried that he's overcautious, which is a good thing. This is not paranoia. And he'll maybe leave an hour or two before Shabbat. Before those 2 hours. So he'll leave his work how many hours instead of 2 hours before? 4 hours before. Because he knows this could possibly lead. He says you should know. He says there's 3 levels in this, Ramchal says. Oh my goodness, what a lucky night is tonight. He says in halacha there's 3 levels. There's the sin itself, then there is the fence around it, and then there's the rabbinical decree to keep you away from it, right? Guys, what's destroying us right now, our community, there's a silent Holocaust going on.
Mixed intermarriage.
Intermarriage. So they once asked the biggest posek, the Rav Moshe Feinstein of Israel, was Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. I don't know if you heard of him. They said, why so much is assimilation going on? He said, because the day that the Orthodox Jews started taking bishul akum and pat akum and yain nesech, like not the business you guys are in, not being careful with, having kosher wine, and not keeping those rabbinical degrees, it's clearly brought down in the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch and the Tur. The reason that rabbis made those 3 rules of Patakum, Chalav Yisrael, those 4 rules.
Chalav Yisrael is not required to be followed, apparently.
No, in America, in America, because you have the FDA, but in other countries you have to. But what I'm saying is, I take that back. Not Chalav Yisrael. Chalav Yisrael is a different thing. But guys, Patakum, that you have to have lechatchila kosher baker. The food has to be cooked. We can't use veggie grill, right? A Jew has to cook the food, and
you can't eat a veggie grill. Okay.
And also, right? You have to have the business you guys are in. It has to be can't be yain nesek.
Got you, Rabbi.
Exactly. So Rav Shlomo Zalman said the beginning of the end was when they started having the opposite of carefulness, right? They started being lax in keeping those mitzvot. What did it lead to? Assimilation. ויש הרחקות שמוטל על כל פירוש ופירוש לעשות להיות כונס בתוך שלו. He says if you want to have this title, guys, of Paroush, guys, by the way, if you ever look on the gravestone, right, the tombstone of a Sadiq, sometimes they write this, that he was a Sadiq and a Paroush. Perushim are the type of people that they, for example, like I told you, my Rebbe, he would have, even though halachically, are you allowed to have meat whenever you want? Yeah. But some people reserve it only for what? Shabbat. So what the Paroush basically is that he wants to have a long distance. Actually I was, how in America they have this big danger of active shooters where people shoot up schools and everything. So the most important rule of security, a security expert that used to work for the FBI said, is that you have to, the main thing is to guard the parameter, right? Once you have good, like El Al, how El Al doesn't even let the terrorists get on the airplane, right? And they do background check. That's what the Paroush is. The Paroush is, even though the sin itself is that the sin coming inside your body, but the Paroush is creating what? This big electrocuted kind of fence that he wants to keep the Satan and sinful activity, not only he wants to keep it away from inside his body, which is like the house, but he wants to even not let it into what? His backyard. So may Hashem help us
Man.
strive. You know what?
Man.
I want to tell you, my Rebbe that first taught me this book, Rabbi Grumman, passed away at a young age. And we're recording for his soul. 63 years old. He passed away from a heart attack. And you know what he said? He said a very important thing.
Bless me.
He said, the Mesilat Yesharim, especially once you get to these chapters, listen, 99% of people are not even tzaddikim. So why are we learning about, maybe we should just stop learning the book now. You get what I'm saying? Because it's you need to put like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week attention to be a tzaddik. Now we're even going above that? So why even learn it? You understand the argument? So he quoted from the great Rosh Yeshiva of Hebron, which was the Rav Ovadia Yosef sent all his kids to that yeshiva. It's like the Harvard of yeshivas in Yerushalayim. Hebron.
Porat Yosef?
Rabbi Yecheskel Sarno. No, actually, so